All right, welcome everyone to May's first meeting of the Portland Utility Board. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and the public will have an opportunity to provide comments through our public comment portion of the agenda, and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing us at utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Hub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Hub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. And this means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And the way that we do this is speaking up and speaking out. Each one of us is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we will focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
Hi, my name is Amy Archer Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. During the meeting, please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you're addressing. The chat box is only viewable by me, so limit chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board, and I may lower your hand once you begin speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can also raise your hand and you'll be called on. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when not speaking, and if using a phone, please press *6 to mute or unmute. Public comment will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can chat through me or raise your hand when we get to that point. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. Pass it back to you.
Right, so on the agenda today, we have a few brief updates regarding recruitment, as well as I believe there's a little bit of a switch up at the city budget office. And then we'll be spending the majority of the time today just continuing the budget process of our recommendations. And then the latter half of the meeting, we'll be looking through our work plan, doing updates and developments, and seeing if we're hitting those targets that we have. So with that, let's go to the disclosure of communications. Does any of the board members have anything that they would like to share? All right, I'm not seeing any hand raises. We can move on. All right, so this is the public comment portion. Amy, have we had anyone submit written public comment before the meeting?
I have not received any in advance or any requests so far. So if you're in the room and you're a member of the public, go ahead and unmute yourself and all right, so seeing none, we will move on, although we will not be able to do the minutes yet. So we can come back to this later if we reach a full quorum.
Sounds good. All right, so we're going to start off with a brief update from the recruitment subcommittee just about how the process is going and if recommendations have been made yet. So I believe, was it Karen and Heather are possibly able to provide that update for us? Is that true?
We are. Heather, would you like to go first?
Um, so it's funny that you put these notes up on the screen because I was just going to read these from my email. Um, so I don't need to necessarily read all of them, but I guess I'll just say that Karen and myself and Alexis was part of some of it, as well as Jack and Farshad. So we reviewed 3 different group interviews. We had 7 candidates, which came down, I think, from the original 11 applications. We went through a scoring system and had a really lively conversation yesterday in which we chose 3 people that we are proposing for the board and then 2 alternates. And then these notes here, the 3 candidates, as well as the 2 alternates, bring a wide variety of skills and strengths, such as interest in government work, water protection, watershed profession, as well as the environment, financial skills and interests, organizational management, visualizing data, engineering, and ecology. Karen, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I might speak. I could provide a few more details about the process that we followed this year, which was quite different, but I don't want to cut you off, Heather, before you were finished talking about the candidates.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, we can come back to that too, but so I wanted to acknowledge and thank Jack Jaden from Commissioner's Map's office, who brought forward a alternative process to the, let's call it, the panel interviews that we have done in the past. And it was, as Heather indicated, group interviews, meaning that the Amy asked questions, and the 2 groups of 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 candidates, responded to those questions, but did it in a way where they were conversing with each other or among 3 in the case of the 3 folks that were speaking together. And it was, well, before I talk about the enormous learning experience that the whole process was, I wanted to acknowledge Amy's extraordinary organizational skills and the time that Amy put into orchestrating and implementing this much more intensive process. So in a way, it was kind of a trade because you didn't need to organize like 7 individual times and have all of the recruitment subcommittee members there for those 7 times, which would have been a logistical challenge. So in that sense, it might have been a little bit simpler, but Amy supported us by not only doing all the outreach and interactions with the candidates and arranging the interviews, but also guiding us through a process, a very different kind of evaluative process, instead of like scoring on an individual question. We organized our sort of skills and characteristics and you know things that we were looking for into themes like problem solving, collaborative skills, open, collaborative skills, innovative thinking on equity, and prioritizing the voice of the community and community needs. And so we had these organized into categories, kind of themes and categories. And while it was, more challenging, I would say, for the reviewer to I guess, evaluate, right? Those, how each party was demonstrating those skills. It was a far more engaging process, and it made you, just speaking for myself, like pay much more attention to what was being said and how people were working together and responding to each other and building off each other. So I found it to be a particularly rewarding process as an interviewer. Oh, and I should say that Amy recorded the interviews so that those of us on the subcommittee could view them and listen to them, you know, on our own time, which was all just really helpful to be able to, yeah, do that, not have to necessarily schedule time in the work week to be able to come to an interview. So that's a little bit more about the process. I'll turn it back over to Heather to say anything more about the candidates that we are recommending. We're not sharing names today, even though Amy has reached out by email to all of the candidates with the outcomes of our review of the interviews. You know, we haven't had a chance to like hear back from them or follow up on any questions that they have. So we didn't want to share names yet in a public meeting. Jack?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'll add right now is I think the board will be very pleased with the people that we are recommending, as well as the alternates. If for some reason one of them doesn't want to take the role, you know, everybody was really motivated and eager to be on the board. And, you know, like Karen said, very engaging group conversations. It was actually a really fun process to listen to. And I find that type of interviewing style much more equitable, especially for a volunteer unpaid position. Yeah, I don't know. Does Jack or Farshad have anything they'd like to add since they were part of the process?
I'd love to chime in here. I want to start by thanking Amy, deeply for the heavy lift that she did in service to this group, capturing the thoughts of how the process should go, interfacing with the candidates, communicating with them. Here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing in the background. And also, like Karen and Heather said, conducting the recordings so that the volunteers on this committee can concentrate their time on simply reviewing and scoring. I also want to say a huge thank you to Heather and Karen and Alexis. I don't think volunteers get thanked enough for their tireless and very important service to community. This is an extremely important advisory body with very complex ideas. And I think when you sign up, you're told something like, oh, you'll work about, 10 hours a week for volunteer work, but you don't really realize the depth of the work that you're going to be doing when you're watching a panel and scoring on, collaboration and problem solving and coming up with a matrix to it. So I can't say enough how amazing this group is and how wonderful the volunteers were on this group, and the fact that throughout the process there was a lot of bias awareness, not only a training, but throughout the dialogue, every single person at some point said, hey, I'm going to check my bias here. Maybe I liked this person because I think like them and I agree with them. Maybe that's something I shouldn't be leaning into, or maybe I have this background and so I'm going to be aware of this bias and counter it by coming closer to what somebody else is saying. And we saw in this group interview context, people disagreeing with one another. So another value of having a group interview and observing a group interview is that folks were saying, hey, and when we have conversations on the board, this is what matters and how a person shows up. So I just also want to reiterate this so that those that haven't been on the subcommittee can truly hear from someone outside of your committee what a great job your representatives were doing. So big thank you. And we're just so excited. Hopefully the candidates will accept so that we can introduce them in short order at the next meeting. Farshad.
Thanks. Thanks, Jack. I'm not going to repeat all the really good comments that everyone else has made, which I I think reflect my experience too. The only thing I want to share is a note of personal gratitude. One to you, Amy, for facilitating this. It did help tremendously. I know that you had to shoulder a lot of the work, but I think it made for an overall process improvement. The thing I want to share also is how encouraged and motivated I am. One, to work with such an excellent group of people on this panel. This is the third recruitment subcommittee that I've been on. And every year, it's just a testament to your commitment to our community, how much you're willing to give of yourselves and try and find the right folks to join this board. And it's also really encouraging to hear all of the positive energy in the candidates that we spoke to. Everybody sees the value of service, and they want to bring themselves to this work, and we're really motivated to contribute to solutions. And I think it's just it's a shot in the arm for me as a staff person to see firsthand how engaged and committed community members are in reaching out and trying to join the board, and how that's also reflected in the board members too. And I think that the process of having kind of group interviews, this is a innovation. I call it an innovation. Maybe it's been around for a while, but Jack, thank you for bringing this to the group. I think it was a real positive turn, and it really gave me a richer understanding of who the candidates were. And I feel really strongly about the recommendations that the subcommittee is making. So thanks for letting me be involved.
Thank you both, and thank you everyone for being part of that subcommittee. And I believe, Amy, am I correct? You've got some next steps, which is that you'll be reaching out to the candidates that we're looking to appoint, and then we'll be sending like recommendations to council. Is that correct?
Yes. So I have reached out to them, and I'm making calls as well. So I hope to connect with all of them. We don't have a quorum today. I had hoped that maybe you'd be able to kind of advance it so that we could get it on council calendar. But since the next meeting is just next week, we'll bring it back at that meeting and hopefully have a quorum then, if we don't get one before the end of today's meeting. So of course, anything that goes before council, is still several weeks out, and even to create those documents, I need some information back from each of the candidates. So we're still several weeks at least away from being able to have folks start, but I will begin planning with them the onboarding and kind of next steps as we move forward. So hopefully we'll do some of that in June, and certainly be starting by July 1st, if not sooner.
Okay. And then I just wanted to say, I think, having been part of the previous 2 rounds of recruitment, I believe we had created just a short Word document kind of out of our reflections about what it was like to do recruitment. And so I was just going to recommend that the parties that were privy to the recruitment, it might be good to put some reflections into that, and that way we can pass along this kind of living document to the next recruitment stage, and that way they can learn from the mistakes we made and the successes that we had, just to keep building on the work that we're doing. So thank you all again for being part of the recruitment process. And I think that's actually going to be the only update today. Looks like our chief natural resource service delivery partner, Bob, is traveling the world right now. So that's very exciting. So I don't think that we have any updates from that. And so if I am correct, Amy, we can dive into our first topic. All right. So yeah, as Amy had said, we're a little bit short of quorum. Doesn't mean that we can't brainstorm and work our way through this document. As right now, we're just continuing the conversation, trying to bring in ideas and expanding the ones that we already have. And just to reference, this is regarding the letter and kind of timeline that Commissioner Maps had requested from us at one of the February work sessions to help us better engage with the budget process and to better engage with not only the commissioner, the staff, city council, as well as just this new set of administration with charter reform. And so, Amy, did you want to pull up the document that we, or the document that we had been previously working on, or the one that you'd kind of cleaned up a little bit for us? And yeah, if anyone wants to raise their hand on anything that they want to add to it or expand, feel free to jump in.
And I'll just mention as the group is getting started. So the document that you have on the screen, this is just pulled. You would have seen some of this summarized in the minutes from the April 18th meeting. And we had a little bit of time at that meeting to get this conversation started. So that is what is reflected here. So of course, this will be honed into something that will look different, but we're still kind of in that brainstorming phase and figuring out how exactly you want to present this information. I noted that, you know, some of the recommendations are very internal, you know, pub conversations about how to approach things, and others might be broader recommendations that are more citywide that you have interest in sharing with all of council, because it came from Commissioner Maps, but there were other council members who kind of echoed that desire for some feedback on how the engagement could be improved. And so there may be multiple forms. And so I think at this point, just brainstorming all the ideas, and we can identify later if it all fits into one or whether there's more. So I can scroll through this or just start at the bottom. And folks, I can't remember who all was in the room. I think we might have some folks who weren't here last time. So if you haven't had a chance to see them in the minutes, they are on the screen for you, but open the floor for your ideas. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Thank you, Robin. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I probably missed this meeting. I have been intermittent at meetings due to reasons beyond my control, I can assure you. But I'm still very committed to POB. I don't trust my memory at this point in time, also due to those reasons. But I recall last year we spoke about this, or was it the first year I was in POB, whichever is true. And I think I've said it many times over that I think one of the greatest challenge for me is not that I don't have financial background, because in my previous life, I worked in a finance division and I was part of the team that created the budget. And I think Fashad has heard me say this many times. We created an operating budget and an expenditure. We call it OPEX and the expenditure budget. And I think one of the greatest challenge for me, having that training and background in finance, is understanding specifically the city's budgeting process, the software they use, how things are presented, and based on that. And this is not me dinging the city of Portland. This has happened to me in every organization I've worked in since I've moved to the United States. And this is not a ding or a negative or anything. I'm just pointing out the differences. Now, back home, we follow strict accounting processes that's based on the English, right? You have your budget, you have your, it's set up in your words would also evade me too, and I'm just saying that. So if you hear me stumbling, it's because the word is not connecting in my brain. So we'll have the balance sheet, you'll have specific things, and any organization I went to, I could have pulled those documents up. But for some reason here in the United States, budgets are done differently dependent on where you go. So I say all of that to say this. We need to simplify the budget process if the intent is for one, lay people to understand it, and more importantly, who we represent, the community to understand it. And until that is done, or the budgeting process is explained so people can understand it, we will be challenged and we will be kept out because it seems that expediency seems to be ultimately what happens when you're getting down to deadlines of April, whatever, and the mayor needs to bring his proposed budget and all of that. And I have seen it happen year in, year out, where input on whichever format the budget, what do you call the committees that give advice? Not the pub.
The
It's probably-
budget advisory committees.
But the backs. I see it has happened in every one of the bureaus with every one of the backs, where expediency diminishes what or little input. And I want to add, I don't see my role as, let me see what I see my role as. I see my role as a pub member as one, understanding the budget, providing input to the budget, and then having a conversation about that, the changes that are being made, and that is explained to me in a way that even if I don't agree with the final decision, at least I understand the decision, so I can speak to it in a knowledgeable way. So I hope that gives some idea of what I perceive this process is, because I know for a fact that bureaus are already ramping up their budget, thinking for next year or for the bump or for this fall bump and the spring bump and all these different things are already happening. So for some reason, we are always brought in late, and then the rush to get that budget out the door limits the information that is shared. And when I have felt that when input is given, it seems that there is resistance from a place of you don't have the power to tell us what to do. And I don't think that is not my intent, but at least I need to understand it.
Thank you, Lorraine. Go ahead, Karen.
Hello, again, Karen Williams speaking. I was thinking something that would help me get to the one of the places that Lorraine was describing, understanding how just understanding the budget period, but understanding what decisions go into prioritizing certain things. It would be helpful for me if we could have a meeting with the bureaus and they could sum up for us after the budget is adopted, before the next one is well underway. If they could come to the pub and we have a conversation about this is how we used the input that you gave us last year, how we considered it, how we changed the budget or we didn't, how we incorporated your input or we didn't, and why. And what the how so and how the budget actually is manifest, like how it is implemented. Let me try saying that a different way, because I think I really muddled that. In years past, we the pub members have asked for, asked for that very thing. Please bureaus, tell us how you incorporated our input or didn't. And we haven't quite struck that. I mean, I don't think, my perception is we haven't quite gotten there. So that's part of my request. Could we have at the beginning of budget season, which is on July 1st, I guess, or soon thereafter, could we have some reflection on the past budget? Like, this is how it turned out. This is how your input was used. This is how your input was not used. And we use that sort of reality check to say, okay, well, now let's then have a conversation about how we can provide input at a different time or in a different way that would be more, actionable, that would, we'd actually be able to influence some of the decisions earlier. That's all I got right now.
Thank you, Karen. This is Robin. I'll throw my hand into the ring. I think this builds upon something I had mentioned at the last session, so it should already be incorporated a little bit closer to the top of this document. And that was recognizing that we mainly engage with the business services manager, and that there is a plethora of people within the bureaus that we work with, that we could be engaging with. And this kind of correlates to the second half of the conversation today, which will be about our work plan. And that is really looking at the managers and supervisors who run specific areas within the department, and seeing who we need to engage with, specifically aligning with our work plan. And so, like, just to flash forward into the conversation later, the top of our work plan for this past year was to get financial assistance to certain people who do not currently have it within the bureaus. And so it just had me thinking, like, who we should really be looking at, who we can finding a manager or two or supervisor that we can really engage with to possibly have them come before us. And that way we can make advances in our knowledge, as well as possibly just the goals that we are attaining. Because I figure we'll be benefited by just speaking to as many people with expertise in the bureau as possible, but just locating specific people that can help us with their background, so that we can better understand the process. And I even find that the people that we engage with often help me ask better questions. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in the ring, because I have the PDF pulled up, and there are, what is it? There was just at least 20 managers that were listed, and I'm like, I don't know that I've ever engaged with half of those people. And so I think that we have a lot of lay knowledge and expertise that we can be engaging with, that we're just scratching the surface currently. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. Karen Williams speaking. I wanted to go back for a moment and just reflect on some things we've tried in the past to, or I should say the bureaus have tried in the past, and we've tried with them to help our understanding of budgeting. And I also am considering something that Farshad said a couple meetings ago about how the budget is, I can't quite remember the analogy, but maybe a keyhole, or you're you're just looking through a certain structure, but not really getting the full picture of how resources are allocated. I probably muddled that up a lot, Farshad. I apologize for that. But I'd like to bring back the idea of the program offer approach, or it's or a way to sort of spell out for us, and maybe it's not just words, you know, maybe it's diagrams, pictures, flow charts, that kind of thing, but to show us the areas of focus and resource allocation, how that sort of ties together to accomplish, you know, a strategic goal or an equity goal, or you know, it's so that it's not just columns of numbers, but it's sort of a description about what these columns of numbers mean. You know, these columns of numbers add up to this outreach program, or to this, you know, data analysis mapping exercise, so we can better understand, you know, where infrastructure is failing. Sort of helping us understand the policy, well, not even just the policy implications, but maybe the program, the connections between the columns of numbers and the programs that are actually delivering the services. So again, that's not a new idea, because we've had the Bureau share program offers with us before. I personally found them helpful. And that does take away some of the, you know, the in the weeds line by line detail that, say, Bob, not speaking for Bob, because Bob's not here today to speak for himself, but you know, I'm pretty sure I've heard him say at some meetings that part of our role is indeed to go through the budget line by line. So, I mean, I think we almost need both perspectives, but program offers for me are more accessible, and they're still not something that I don't think is accessible and digestible for the general public, but I think they get closer to that. So yeah, perhaps we could add to our list, maybe revisiting that approach to sharing budgetary information. Yeah, I'll leave that there for now, and think if there's anything else I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that. And yeah, with Bob's previous suggestion from the last session about having trying to figure out how much we engage with the budget, whether it's a couple of times each quarter or at least once a month, really does have me thinking that it might be better to engage at least once a month, like having a set meeting each month for this. Because I was drawing up a timeline and I'm like, when is budget season? And budget season is like 6 months out of 12 months. And so I wasn't sure if we should be mindful to like have more budget meetings during the budget session, and then having a couple throughout the non-season, or if it's just best to dive really into it and making sure that we're focusing on the budget each month. And that way we're engaging with the ongoing conversation and not just jumping into the deep end once the conversation in the fall has already started. Because I know that multiple staff members have said that as soon as the budget is submitted, they're already working on the next one. And that I kind of feel like we have to have a mindset of once the budget is submitted, we're already working to engage with the next one as well. And so I think deciding how many meetings we're going to have is specifically related to the budget is going to have to just come from the pub members. But I do want us to reflect on how we think we can successfully navigate that better. Let me read one more time. So I looked at this is related to my previous comment, not the one I just did, the one about engaging managers, more managers and supervisors. The Bureau of Environmental Services in the most recent budget does successfully, their org chart is much more elaborate. It tells you who exactly the manager is and what they're in charge of. Whereas the Portland Water Bureau just kind of breaks it down into the two divisions, but they didn't specifically list out who are the managers and supervisors of each division. And so if we have the capacity to find that somewhere where it's already posted, or just request that information, I think that would help us specifically navigate who to chat with within the Water Bureau. And I'll just note for easy access, in the budget, it was like page 21 that BES had listed their org chart, and it was page 69 that the Water Bureau listed their org chart.
And just for the record, Water Bureau is happy to provide their more detailed org chart as well. It's not the one that is in the full budget document, but that is available. And often we haven't kept it up to date because we haven't done orientation in quite a while. Usually that is something that we would provide in the onboarding and orientation materials as well, with all of the other detailed information that we provide and bombard people with at the beginning of the process to try to orient to the bureaus.
And Amy, would you scroll back to the top of the list? See if there's anything we can review on there.
So that first section is primarily about equity and how it relates to the budget. And then I think it dives into some of the recommendations about being more detailed on the financial and budget side of things, both in recruitment and frequency of meetings. Would love input from others as well. If you do go down a path of having more meetings throughout the year, what type of information you're looking for. There's some on the screen here. If there's anything additional, certainly would want to be able to make sure that we're preparing staff so that they're providing the information that you're wanting throughout the year and when it's relevant.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yes, I like the idea. Robin and others have suggested this as well of a regular, at a minimum, sort of a status update. budget. And I think, once a month seems, yeah, I would say once a month, not every meeting, since we meet twice a month. Maybe every 2 months is a sweet spot. I don't know, but something regular on the calendar, and where we have sort of, I don't know, let's call them standing items that we would like, a status update, right? And on the screen is, a few examples, challenges, updates, overruns, that sort of thing. I think that would be the place to integrate this idea of how did things actually turn out. And that's in a sense is a status, but it might be built off of, like 4, let's say highest priority areas for us that we're interested in, maybe 4 particular programs or 4 particular, items that we brought up or supported in the last budget, or 4 particular things that we had a concern about. And that, sort of a standing item at these monthly meetings, monthly updates is, how are things shaking out now that we're actually implementing the budget? How are things shaking out in the areas where Pub is most interested or most engaged? So yeah, I just offered that as to sort of fill in a little bit more about what I would be looking for in a status update. Or what are the actual expenditures now that, the budget was the budget, but what are we actually spending on this thing that we said that we were committed to? And is it working out? I guess, I mean, an example would be, the trainee positions that we were very interested in and supported in the last budget. And, in the end, they weren't able to be filled because of a bunch of things that we have spent a long time talking about. But, something like that on a monthly, bi-monthly basis, it's like, I would really appreciate that. We haven't been able to fill these positions yet, but we've had to hold the vacancies open for longer, but we're planning on recruiting them in December, whatever the case may be. That kind of detail would be, I would like to have that level of detail in the status updates.
Go ahead, Heather.
I just wanted to show support for what Karen just suggested. I really like the idea of looking at actual expenditures in targeted areas. And then I know we've talked about this a few times, but having a subcommittee, even though it is more of our time, I think would be really helpful and could be really proactive, and could maybe help in, choosing those targeted areas as well.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so I think we have unless someone else wants to speak up quickly, I think we have a good start to a good continued conversation about what we're doing. And I think that this is actually a perfect segue into reviewing the work plan and trying to implement how we could navigate the budget, as well as really having attainable goals that we can set, that we can get those check-ins that Karen had suggested, to see if we're making progress or if we're just telling people what we like, but not necessarily being successful in getting them. So with that, let's put a pin into that conversation, and we can we'll move into reviewing our work plan. And I think there's going to be a lot of crossover between the last conversation and this one, because we do want to we are creating recommendations of how we want to navigate, and I think that will be helpful for attaining the goals that we have. So on the screen, you'll see the work plan document. Looks like there are topics on the left in like priority. They're in priority segments. I don't know if they're specifically listed in priority like 1 to 5, but they are listed as like high priority, medium priority, and internal. And then in the center, you see the progress updates that list out kind of what we've done so far, the dates that we've engaged with them. And yeah, just take a moment to look at this, see, would this be a moment where we are kind of reflecting on if we want to rearrange this a little bit, or is this more of like a checkpoint of, hey, we have a couple more months before the next work plan, and we want to see what we can focus on in these summer months?
Yes,
Or
to both. I think great segue, Robin. So one reminder for folks. So I have them grouped by the high priority, medium priority, really that those categories, both the high and the medium, were all maybe the same level of priority. It was just a decision of things that you expected to dedicate meeting time to in the current year versus what fell into that medium category is more larger ongoing projects and other things that you were asking because of the limited meeting time, either for written updates or for the bureaus to engage with you when appropriate, when they're reaching a decision point, like they did, for example, with the Columbia Slough topic and, some of those other items that have come forward based on whether something is happening related to that other than the kind of routine service delivery. And then that final section, as you mentioned, is the internal stuff. So the things that you have to do, either because it's defined by code or it's just part of your role. But of course, those can be honed as far as what's most important for you within those areas for the coming year to focus on. For example, under the board development category, obviously there's always onboarding, but this topic of really trying to emphasize the financial grounding and familiarity with budgeting and how it works with the bureaus in the city is kind of a heightened focus area for you right now, and making sure that the onboarding for that piece is relevant. So two things. This is what you had adopted in your report last year for where you were going to work this year. And every time, even though you're responding to a lot of hot items as they come out throughout the year, every time I go to update the work plan and actually see, when were you talking about this or have you done anything on this topic, almost always there's quite a bit happening, particularly in all of those high priority item areas. The exception, or one of the exceptions this year is not advancing as much on the hiring and retention and some of the other topics that were hoped to be raised and have been raised within the context of other things like budget development or specific programs, but not on their own. So I haven't highlighted any changes in those areas. But yeah, you have a lot that you've been doing for the past year. So even though there's feeling like there's more that needs to be done, you have made progress in a lot of areas. So kind of want feedback from you all, both on priorities for the next 2 months, because we have, well, after today, 3 more meetings this month, and then the start of next year. So priorities for the next, 5 or so meetings at least. And then second to that is redeveloping this list or seeing whether there are new areas that need to move into this high priority and kind of be the focus for the coming months, such as the natural areas. I forget, and natural resource service delivery stuff, those programs.
And Amy, can I have you do a slow scroll through what you got on the screen for us? Karen, go ahead.
I wanted, Karen Williams speaking, I wanted to revisit for a moment what Amy called out that was on our high priority list and we haven't spent much time this year talking about, and that's the hiring, retention, and promotion of BIPOC staff and ongoing work related to the board developed workplace racial equity mid-pandemic report. So I would like to suggest that we use the remaining time that we have this year, meaning this year by the end of June, to really focus on that. I mean, I think there's still time now that the budget is anyway behind us, and before we start on engaging on the next one, I think this is a perfect time to look at that goal or that high priority area and perhaps invite the bureaus, the equity managers to come and give us indeed a status update on that. And I know we, I think it was just last week or earlier this week, got the information sent to us about the updated dashboard. So sorry, this isn't directly related to the work plan, but I guess I wanted to put a pin in a topic for one of our remaining meetings in May and June, and perhaps we could have some conversation about revisiting the workplace racial equity mid-pandemic report and getting an update from equity managers and bureaus on hiring and retention of BIPOC staff.
Thank you, Karen, for that. I threw a thumbs up in the chat in agreement. That was one of the first things I noticed. That was a high priority that we haven't quite gotten time to address. So I would second that. And then I'm going to go quiet for a second because I'm going to try to pull up this document on my computer. And that way I'm not squinting at the screen. So just a second. Feel free to shout out if you have something you'd like to say.
Karen Williams will shout out one more suggestion while Robin is transitioning screens. I mean, I think there certainly are a couple things, if we're looking to use this as a launching point for our work plan next year. I mean, there's certainly some things that we can cross off. I think the comprehensive rate review study, yay, done, right? So that's something that we can count. I mean, we'll put that in our final report that we engaged with that and communicated with council on it, but I think that could certainly go away. And I'm looking at, yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of those other items that aren't, well, they're not in bold, and I can't remember what the bold. I think the bold was a way of saying that these are maybe high priorities, but sustainability of infrastructure. Yeah, honestly, I'm just not remembering what we meant by that. And I'm probably the one that said it, but I'm not quite remembering what we were thinking there. And then what was the other one? Yeah. So that one maybe revisit and discuss, like, is that something that we want to have on our work plan for 2025 or 5. And then I think it's refining the top one there, the building debt recovery and financial assistance programs. I would see that still being a very high priority for our engagement for sure. But I think I need to think about more how we can, other than just repeating that and saying, yes, we're still interested in it. Like, given the time that we're in now, 5 years, 4 years, I guess, post-pandemic, city transition, struggles and with rising costs and looking to PSEP and other outside funding to fund basic core programs. What does realistic financial assistance look like, right? In this new anyway, in the time that we're in. So I think revisit and refine that. I would still definitely have it in our high priority items. I mean, I think that's like one of the core things that I think we're responsible for engaging with as the board. So.
Yeah, this is Robin. I want to second what Karen said specifically about the financial assistance programs. That's been one of the ongoing critiques of the bureaus, is that they've had many years to provide financial assistance program to apartment renters, but have not successfully bridged that gap yet. And so I think it's going to have to be something that we're kind of putting I don't know what to say besides puts on necks here, but just to keep pushing that, because we did make an advancement. I'm losing the acronym for providing assistance to nonprofit multifamily residences, but we really need to figure out a way for the bureaus to offer financial assistance to people who get their water services through third-party vendors, which are just apartment renters, and that's about nearly 50% of the city. And then separately, I wasn't sure if this was specifically pushing for the natural resources service delivery area, but one of the main points of our most recent letter was that we thought that the bureaus were abandoning their focus on environmental sustainability, and a lot of the more environmental leaning projects were essentially on the chopping block without PSEP funding. And so there's a couple items, I believe on the second page of this, that really we could possibly just group together when it comes to like climate resiliency. And that was the climate action plan, green infrastructure, tree program, urban heat, island. And I just wasn't sure if that should be included in just more of a focus on the natural resource service delivery area project and the team that we have for that, or if that in itself is just a specific area of environmental and climate work that we want to focus on. And we have many things listed, but in reality, we could probably glue a couple of them together if we wanted to have a greater if we wanted to make essentially the climate crisis and the implications of it a greater focus when it comes to the policies that we are recommending, but also those line by line budget items in order to successfully get those climate plans funded. And yeah, with Amy, with that one, it's like the first 5 or 6 items on the second page that looked like we could possibly kind of glue a lot of them together in a blurb. It starts with climate action and adaptation strategies. This is Robin. I know that I believe the bureaus just had a presentation in the last month where they went to council and gave council their estimates for the filtration project. And I know that we've gotten public comment on that. So I wasn't sure if we wanted, that could be like, that's an item that's ongoing that we could continue to discuss, or if it was more important to focus on the advanced metering infrastructure, which was one of those advancements that people within the pub ex officio specifically are saying that it's really important that it comes along. And I know that we were kind of juggling if we should put it off or if it's important to do it now for our long-term cost benefits. So those were two areas I thought we could possibly navigate for the next couple of meetings as well. Go ahead, Karen Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Karen Williams. I think what you just said fits about the advanced metering and keeping us apprised of what's going on with that. Another one of those, whatever happened to that, you know, it really fits nicely into, I had the words and they just escaped me, but kind of looking at, okay, so different different ways and alternative structures to make and keep water affordable and accessible to everyone. So it just made me think like back to the topic at the very top of our plan there about billing, debt recovery, financial assistance, that you know, maybe we sort of broaden that topic into, you know, affordability of water, and different, well, just that, and what are the ways that we, right, the whole we, I guess, the bureaus with the pubs urging, you know, are investigating alternative, alternative funding structures and sources, and different ways to measure and charge, right, people for water fairly. And maybe that sort of all fits under that umbrella. And we're not, right, it just all fits under that umbrella, as does, Robin, your you know, ongoing inquiry into how are we going to be able to support folks that are struggling to pay their water bill that's part of their rent. You know, how can we I mean, I think we all recognize that that's a problem, but what are the ways that we can actually respond to that need? I just remember, you know, Cecilia and many others, former ex officio Sarah, you know, talking about the advanced metering, and in fact that being one of the ways that this bureau was proposing to make water more affordable, or at least to be able to, that might be a bit of an overstatement, but that having that discernment of where the water's going was going to help us get to a place where we could more directly target financial assistance. And I'd love to know if that, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love to know if that's working or if we think we're moving towards that, that scenario. Because you're right, Robin. I mean, that was a really big ticket, and that was one of the trade-offs, right? Spend, what's it, 90 million, 9 million, some really big number over the next 5 years, or not spend that money and, you know, spend it on green infrastructure. Well, I'm crossing bureaus now, but anyway, that was a trade-off, and I would be, yeah, that's enough said.
related to what Karen and what I had previously alluded to, I believe we had an update earlier this year where the bureaus had decided that they believe that they were going to work with a tiered system, 3 tiers specifically. And I know that we had submitted a letter saying that we would actually support, we wouldn't necessarily support capping the tiers, and that way we can address people with exponentially larger properties than others, and that way we wouldn't have like an incredible range in like that 3rd tier if it was important and cost effective for there to be like 4 or 5 tiers. And that kind of feels like it goes along with the financial assistance, but specifically with the part that we were just riffing on for the AMI. And so is it too early to maybe request in a little bit of an update on if the bureaus have decided that they're going to go with 3 tiers? Because at the time, I do believe that they were believing they were going to do 3 tiers, but nothing had been fully settled. And I do think it's been a handful of months since then. So I just wasn't sure if we could get any update from them to see how their tier structure is forming itself.
I'm not positive, this is Amy, I'm not positive if it's a component of it, but I believe that for the next meeting, we do have BES staff scheduled to provide some update on the rate study implementation. And so I believe that that would be a component of that, or if not, questions could be raised during that meeting and help identify whether there's some other component you want to integrate into the work plan as a result of the information you get with the next update. So that should be happening next week as long as staff remain available. I know not everybody can see the actual on-screen work plan since some of you are connecting by phone. So if you're connecting by phone, please feel free to just throw out priorities from your perspective. It doesn't need to be something that's on our existing chart. We can figure out where it fits or how it fits. And if you're seeing what's on screen and need me to scroll somewhere, just let me know and we can move to that. We have just a few minutes left, I think.
This is Julia. Is this for the next budget process or for the one that we're in the middle of? I'm sorry.
It can be for either, Julia. So some of it is, some folks have identified priorities just for the upcoming meetings in the next month or two as we wrap up this year. But we're also more broadly really talking about priorities for the next year as well and beginning that formation process. So just looking at where you've gotten with the topics that are on there, whether you want to, you know, hone where you're focusing in that area or identify something that needs to be elevated or added to the list.
Yeah. I would like to get a deeper understanding from the bureaus how they're rolling out the rate increases that are happening. I'm not 100% sure if that falls squarely under our budget process, but there are really significant changes that are coming down, especially from BES. And I just want to make sure that we have a full understanding of exactly what those changes are, and B, that we have an understanding of how they are conveying that information to the folks it's going to impact. Because I mean, some of those are going to start taking effect. I'm sorry, I just took a bite. I apologize. Some of those are going to be taking effect. I mean, like this June. So it's just, I think it feels a little bit like there isn't a lot of outreach going on, and maybe it should be. So anyway, I would just like to get an update from bureaus on that.
Thank you, Julia. And we tentatively have that scheduled for next week. So hopefully that will be a good update or the start of that conversation.
I just felt it was good to highlight today too. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'll just say one last thing while we're wrapping up. I know that Bureau Strategic Plans is on this list. I think it's on the second or third page. But I know that the Portland Water Bureau has a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan that's coming to an end soon. I believe their plan was from like 2019 to 2024. I want to say the Water Bureau, not BES on that one. If I'm correct, as one of the bureaus has a strategic plan that is ending, and so we have the capacity to perhaps look at their strategic plan, see if we believe that they're still in alignment with it, and kind of do a check-in. I don't know how deep of an audit that we could do, but we could at least look at what was planned and where we're at now, as a handful of us have actually been on this board since near the start of that strategic plan. And if I'm correct, it's the, let's see, This is going to be my little message. Yes, the Water Bureau has the 5-year strategic plan that's ending this year, and then BES has a strategic plan that goes till 2027. And so if we wanted to engage with those, with the Water Bureau, we're basically checking to see if we think they've met their goals. Whereas with BES, we're checking like a midway point to be like, hey, is the Bureau still on target for what they said that they would like to achieve for these plans? All right, so with that, I think we've expanded on the work plan. It might be good for all of us to take a little bit of time to kind of look at specific areas. We might want to find like 3 or 4 areas that we think we should be focusing on for these upcoming meetings, as well as kind of getting our footing for how we'd like to navigate the upcoming financial year. And so yeah, we kind of want to be thinking about what our plans are for May and June, but I think we really should also just be coming back to like thinking about quarterly goals. We tend to have like annual goals, 5-year goals, but it would be good for us, I think, to be checking in with by setting goals for like a couple months at a time, and then when those months pass, coming back and being like, did we achieve this? How much did we advance on it? Do we need to be addressing it during the next quarter? And so, yeah, Amy, do you have anything else to add with that?
No, I think that's a great idea. And so just as I know sometimes in the moment during the meeting, it can be hard to come up with things, and you might have ideas at random times over the next several weeks. So as those come up, please send them my way. So feel free to call, email, whatever works best for you. And we'll continue to evolve this document and bring it back for the full group discussion and update. Certainly as the months progress, because a final version does end up in your annual report, which we finalized towards the end of summer. But obviously we'll be scheduling agendas based on this, and then Robin will also be part of the leadership meetings with the Bureau staff to do a little bit of planning for upcoming agendas and priorities, and identify anything that may need to be added or timing of some of these topics based on staff capacity to provide the updates at a timely moment. So I think we're on to announcements. So maybe I'll just briefly touch on a couple. So you saw that the mayor's proposed came out, and as well as some other announcements, both with the executive leadership appointments, including the one over public works, and announcements around the permitting structure, and the change in the bureau structure for permitting. I think it's permitting and development is the department. And so look to your emails if you haven't seen that yet. There is some information there. So if you have questions or follow-up that you want on any of that, just reach out to me and let me know. Also, as of yesterday, recall that I sit within the city budget office, and the budget office director has resigned, and Ruth Levine, who has been the deputy director, was appointed as the interim director. So Ruth is the point of contact for any of you if you have any questions or concerns related to our work, and want to elevate it to my supervisor, the director. And I think everything else, yeah, the workforce demographics you received via email. So take a look, and if you have follow-up questions as a result of that, as was mentioned in the announcement that went out with that, the detail is not, doesn't have the fine level of detail that at least prior members had interest in looking more specifically at bureau level detail. And part of that is to maintain confidentiality and based on the type of information that is being shared. So what is available is at the level where they can maintain that appropriately. But certainly if there's any follow-up questions, we can follow up with either the bureau experts within the bureaus, probably their equity managers and others, or with human resources. So let me know if you have follow-up questions related to that. And the other two are just the standing announcements, right? That we're always looking for a new co-chair to help Robin bear the burden of kind of the leadership meetings and facilitating these meetings. And as we're approaching being back to a full board, we'll have greater numbers, which will be great for the meetings and in the future. But as a new member, you all know that it can be overwhelming coming in and all the information that you have to learn. And so it's rare that somebody who's just stepping in wants to step into the role of being a co-chair. They usually want to get their footing first. So if there is going to be a co-chair, it is likely one of you that is on this meeting. So consider it if it works with your schedule. And certainly, as always, ask me or Robin questions, or Karen, who has been a co-chair previously. We're always happy to talk about what it means week to week. And I will be sending out another request about administrative review committees. So we have somebody already scheduled for May, and we'll be looking for the future months. So just a heads up about that. Are there any other announcements from folks in the room?
I'm not seeing any. So with that, on the screen are what we're going to talk about next week. Looks like we're going to have a BES rate study update, hopefully get a couple questions that we put on our work plan today answered. So come prepared with your questions. And then, yeah, just keep in mind what we can do in these next 2 months before we have a full board, and then how we would like to navigate in the first 3 months of the new fiscal year, which starts in July. So everything on the screen is how you can reach out to us through email or give Amy a call. And our next meeting is next week, Thursday, May 16th at 11 a.m. I look forward to seeing all of you there. And with that, meeting adjourned.